House. All right, Ryan, are you good? All right, good deal. Let me get set up here and ready to go. Sure is good seeing everybody on a beautiful day today. Tell you what, these are we should be doing this class outside tonight. I think that would be even better. Well, did you guys get a workbook on your way in? Make sure you get a workbook on that table coming in. There's pens there as well, so that you can utilize that, and you'll be ready to go with that. How many of you went home last week and worked on your growth plan? All right, I like it. I didn't see any hands not go up, so I'm just gonna assume everybody did that for sure, and you worked on that first R, the resources that we talked about. So. All right, we'll get ready to dive in. Ryan, are we up? Are we live? All right. Well, welcome out, everybody. Welcome out, everyone online on YouTube, Facebook, and our website. It's good to see everybody. It's good to see everybody in the house tonight. And if you are online watching with us, if you're tuning in online, you need to get a digital workbook. So if you go to johnbarrettblog.com/growth. So johnbarrettblog.com/growth. I think it's on the screen. You can see that prompt there. If you go there, it'll take you to a page, and both workbooks, the one from last week is up there, the digital PDF, and then the one for tonight. You'll see session 2. You can click on that. By the way, everybody in the house, if you want to get a digital version of this tonight, go to johnbarrettblog.com/growth, and you'll see those downloads right there. So you can get that download and have that workbook to follow along with us online. There's going to be a lot of fill in the blanks, a lot of content that we're going to cover tonight. And here in the house, we've got our workbook. We got a real workbook in that. So we're going to work through this and talk about how to create a spiritual growth plan, session 2. Now tonight, I'm gonna cram in 2 sessions. Usually I do this in 3 sessions, 3 different weeks. But tonight we're gonna cram 2 of them into one. So get ready tonight, because you're gonna get a lot that we're gonna put into tonight and condense it. So the 3 things that we talk about with the growth plan, last week what we covered was the R, the resources. You've got to have resources to have a growth plan. And we talked all about that, all about how the power of having resources, books, podcasts, videos, courses, anything that you can get a hold of, just resources to help you grow and to set up a growth plan of when are you going to sit down and when are you going to do your growth, where are you going to do it, what are you going to do when you get there. And so last week we covered everything about resources, and hopefully you worked on, as you mentioned, at the end, kind of putting together your own growth plan where you kind of mark down some of those things. Now, I know a lot of you that were here last week and those that watched last week online, it's a little overwhelming when I kind of share where I'm at and what I do with my growth plan and that. But you have to remember that I've been doing this for years. I kind of made the reference to like a marathon last week. You don't just kind of wake up one day and say, I'm going to run a marathon. Some people do, I guess. But the most of us, if we woke up into that, it wouldn't work out real well. You don't just run 20-some miles just, because you felt like it. You've got to train. You kind of work up. You might start with, just a mile, and then you kind of work up and you kind of go through a regiment so that you can build that endurance. And it's same for me. When I started with my growth plan, as you guys remember last week, it was just one book that I happened to read that someone kind of introduced me to. I didn't even like to read. I didn't even, it wasn't even on my radar. And is a young 19, 20-year-old, and I got that one resource, and it changed everything. And so that started my journey of kind of looking in the resources. Now, for me, it would have been a massive goal to read one book every few months or something there. We didn't have podcasts back then and those kind of things. So, it was just a book. You didn't have very many audiobooks either. But that would have been huge if I would have just done that. So start small. Just start wherever you're at. Don't worry about, the complexity of it. Don't worry about all that. Just start where you're at. Figure out that growth plan that we talked about last week. Kind of lay out that why I want to grow. Okay, what are the categories I want to grow in? And then begin to look at where am I at my best? When am I at my best? What am I going to do? What's my plan when I get there? And then how am I going to apply this to my life? So we covered the resources last week. Tonight, what we're going to talk about is the E and the P. So it's REP is kind of in this growth plan. And resources is the first one we talked about. Tonight, we're going to talk about experiences and people and how they play a huge part of your growth. the experiences that you go through, and then the people that you surround yourself with. These are two vital elements of having a growth plan to be intentional about. Right? It's not just getting resources like we talked about last week. And even though that's pretty foundational, with getting those podcasts, books, resources, courses, videos, just anything that you can that's helping you grow and learn and develop yourself, thinking about the experiences that you go through and the people that you surround yourself with. If you get these three things, so the one we talked about last week, the two that we're going to talk about tonight, if you can get that trifecta, right, that's where you are in a great, great growth place right there. So grab your workbook and open up. Let's dive in because we got a lot that we're going to cover tonight and a lot that we're going to unpack. So let's talk about experiences. Our experiences in life as part of our growth plan and being able to be intentional about our experiences. We all have experiences. We all are living life, right? Each day we're surrounded by all kinds of circumstances and things that happen, but I don't think everybody is intentional to actually extract how to get the most out of our experiences. I love this idea that life is too short to live with a could have, should have, would have regrets. I think there's a lot of people that are living life that think, oh, I wish I would have done that. Oh, I wish I would have done this. Oh, I wish this would have happened. You know, I kind of mentioned last week, the goal of my life is at the end that I squeeze every ounce, every drop of life out at the end, that I live full and die empty. I don't want to die completely full or with a half tank still in the tank. I want to know that I squeezed every part out. So we have to understand that experiences really shape who we are. Now, what's interesting about this, if you go back and you think about the disciples and go back to biblical times and you think about how did the disciples learn, right? What was that like? I mean, Jesus was a rabbi. Remember, when he called the disciples, Jesus was a rabbi, which is another word for teacher. In the disciples, another word for disciple is a student. So they were just students of this teacher named Jesus. He was the teacher, the rabbi. They were the disciples. They had the discipline to be a student. That's where the word disciple comes from. So if you think about this, in fact, just fast forward even to modern day education. Modern day education in a classroom style is relatively incredibly new in the history of the world. How people actually learned before we kind of institutionalized into classroom settings and those types of environments was you would just follow mentors or teachers around. You would live life with them. In fact, the first colleges, universities that ever existed, they weren't a professor in a room and you kind of went to different classes with different professors. You had one person that taught you, and those students in the university would live with that person over the course of a year or longer. And they would learn just as the person lived life. There wasn't class time. There wasn't, we're going to sit down and pull out your textbook, ladies and gentlemen, and let's talk about this. They learned as they lived. That was just it. And if you think about it, think about with the disciples and Jesus. Jesus rarely just kind of sat down. I mean, he taught, obviously. He would go to the mountainside and he would teach the masses. But we don't really see him sitting down with the disciples saying, open your textbook to page 125. Today we're going to talk about the kingdom principles of this. Now, he was teaching kingdom principles, but how did he do it? Around the campfire, when they were having dinner. He would talk about things. When they were out, he would say, you see that tree over there that we're walking by? Yeah. Well, that a fig tree bears good fruit, but one that's dying will bear bad fruit. Let me tell you about how God is kind of like that. Wow, amazing. And then they would go somewhere else. They would bump into somebody, and Jesus would do some miracle. And they would just observe what he was doing as he would heal them and what he would say to them. Your faith has made you well. And the disciples were just kind of taking note like, wow, that experience is what taught me. Does that make sense? And so I say that because we have to understand that part of our greatest growth just comes through living life. Now, we don't get to follow around physically Jesus today, but I would argue we sort of do by the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is leading us. Every experience that you have, every single day that you wake up and you live life, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, there are moments that I believe God is trying to teach us to this day. To say, hey, do you see that tree that you just drove by? I mean, maybe that would be a case, but, hey, you know that person you just bumped into at the grocery store? Yeah. Hey, there's a lesson there about the kingdom. Really? Does that make sense? So we have to understand that life is lived by experiences. So the more that we can get intentional and kind of tune into that and extract and really understand how to do that, the more we're going to truly be a disciple, truly live what God wants us to do. Because in your notes, here's your first fill in the blank, is this: life is a classroom. Life is a classroom. You don't have to go to a classroom for God to speak to you and teach you and do all these things. Your life is the classroom. If you think about Jesus, he did not have a classroom. He didn't even go to the temple really to teach. He just taught as he lived. I mean, on the road to Samaria, hey, let me tell you about something that happened here long ago. So you have to understand, life is a classroom. And if you'll begin to lean into this idea that, okay, every day has something for me to get, then you're going to begin to have higher growth, more growth, and experience what God wants. In your notes, everything that happens to you can be used for you. So everything that happens to you can be used for you. That's a fact, and I believe that. The good, the bad, and the ugly, okay? And I'm not saying that God caused all those things. I'm not going to get into any of that deep theology, right, of where do bad things happen and why do bad things happen to good people and all those things. But here's what I know at the end of the day. I can get caught up in why did this happen, why? But here's what I've found, and this is just my experience in life. When you ask why is this happening, especially when they're kind of hard, things that we go through, and we think, why is this happening? Why is this happening? There's a better question we should be asking than why. And why is a good question, maybe, but it's not the best question. It's not the great question. The great question is, what do I do with what happened? Not why is this happening? You'll get stuck there because you may never know why right now. You may never know why. I don't know why I experienced it. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why I lost my job. I don't know why this thing took place. I don't know why this, relationship went this way. I don't know. And if you sit there and just ask why, you could very easily get stuck. But when you start saying, what do I do with what has happened? Not why did this happen, but what do I do with what has happened? That has forward motion. That has growth. That has something you can actually go somewhere with. Does that make sense? And when we turn our why into what, our question of why into what, you're going to start growing in life. You're not going to get stuck. And I think there's a lot of people that are stuck asking why. And the bad news is sometimes you get the why, many times you don't. But what? There's always an answer. There's always an answer to what do I do with what has happened. You can always take that and go somewhere with it. Genesis 50:20. I love this. It says, you intended to harm me. This is Joseph, right? When he's talking to his family, that he says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. You've heard this scripture if you grew up in church at all. This idea that what the enemy meant for evil, God uses for good, right? That's another sort of translation. You intended to harm me, but God used it for something great. Joseph went through all kinds of experiences that were hard, tough, but it was the very thing that was the catalyst that God turned into something great for his life. So you've got to understand that whatever you go through, again, life is a classroom. Everything that happens to you can be used for you if you'll allow it. Now, I thought this was fascinating. Years ago, Bronnie Ware, who did palliative care and would take care of those that were on their deathbed, and she took care of them. And she was one of the leading nurses that did this. And through years, decades of her experiences with living with all of these people in the last moments of life, she wrote a book called The 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she basically just recorded, she said, here's the top 5 things that I heard between thousands upon thousands of people. There was a commonality of the top 5 regrets. And she wrote a little book about it years and years ago. Pretty fascinating. And it was so interesting because it didn't matter where they grew up, didn't matter what ethnicity they were, didn't matter what social class they came from, didn't matter if they had wealth, it didn't matter if they were in poverty, it didn't matter. On that deathbed, everybody was kind of an equal playing field. And there were 5 things that she kind of observed. And I put them down in for you. The 5th one, just so that you know, I think this is interesting, was I wish that I'd let myself be happier. The 4th one, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends, right, the people around me. 3rd, I wish I had the courage to express my feelings, not hold that in so much. And that. Number 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. That's interesting, right? But the number 1, this is fascinating, was this. Across the board, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I think, wow, how many times are we living life so concerned? It's kind of like if you were here on Sunday, we talked about that performance, the crowd, right? Being so concerned about the crowd, and even with good intentions, right? Like, I want to please the crowd, right? I want the crowd to like me. I want to serve them. I want to do great things. And that's a good start. That's a good intention. But if we're not careful, that pleasing the crowd really limits us of living out who we're called to do, or who we're called to be. Because now we're living for the crowd, not necessarily living the way that God wanted us to live. And she said, I noticed that the regret was always that they had the courage just to live the life that they felt sort of called to live, if you will. And I say that because I think it's absolutely vital that we understand that our experiences are really our growth moments. That's what life is made up. I mean, life is a sum total of all of our experiences. And here's something that I've always thought, that I heard this years ago, and I thought, well, that's a statement I want to hold on to. It says that the goal of life is to die with memories, not dreams, right? Memories of great experiences that you had, where you learned, you grew, and you had all these great things, versus all these dreams that were unlived, unsung, unsaid, undone, right? They were just dreams that still rested. Kind of like, I don't want to, die with a quarter tank in or a half tank. I want it to be empty. So live with memories by getting those experiences. I love what Mark Twain said. He said, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did do. So throw off the bow lines, sail away from the safe harbor, catch the trade winds in your sails, explore, dream, and discover. I always loved that. I remember reading that years ago, and I thought, wow, that's good. We're going to be more kind of, concerned and disappointed by the things we didn't do, not the ones that we did. So step out. So 3 things that we've got to think about that we need to do with our experiences. Okay, if we know that life is made up of experiences, life is a classroom, that's how God teaches, that's how Jesus taught, was just through life. I believe it's how the Holy Spirit is continuing to teach us. There's 3 things that we've got to do. The first one you got to remember is this: you've got to create them. You've got to create experiences. Second thing, you've got to connect them. Connect experiences. And then the third thing is convert them. So create them, connect them, and convert them. Those are the 3 things we're going to unpack about your growth plan, about how you can be intentional about your experiences. So let's break it down. So create them. How do we create experiences in that? Here's what I've learned long ago in your notes. Schedule for success, right? That's your fill in the blank. Schedule for success. And here's what I mean by that, is that your life, in fact, when I coach a lot of people and I work with them one-on-one, one of the very first things that I do is I say, show me your calendar. Show me your schedule, your planner, your calendar, whatever it is, if they even have one. Most of them do. But, a lot of times it looks like Swiss cheese, right? It's got a few important things in there, and then there's just nothing. There's just all these empty spots. And I look at it, and I go, well, we got to start here, because the secret to success is in your schedule. And this isn't a time management course. I'm not necessarily talking about that. But I'm saying, when are you scheduling experiences? Are you being intentional to create a life where you are surrounding yourself with opportunities to grow and to learn? Like tonight, right? You came here, right? You had it, in your mind or on your schedule to say, hey, I'm going to try to come here and get on the class, or those watching online, right? You did that. That's a great start. But think about, what are you doing to schedule success in your life? And what I mean by that is, get intentional about what your calendar looks like. What are you doing on there? One of the things that I do at the beginning of every month is I sit down. I actually have prompts that I go through. It's a whole nother story. I won't, if we were doing a big retreat for 3 days, I'd walk you through it all, right? But for the sake of time, at the beginning of the month, I've got this just prompts. They're just questions. What do you want to do this month? What do you want to experience this month? What do you want to grow in this month? What are you going to do with your family this month? What are some memories you're going to do? And there's probably 15, 20 different questions. And they're just Kickstarters for me, triggers for me, that when I sit down a few days before the month begins, and I'll go through and I'll just try to plug in and answer all those things, so that month is filled with intentionality. Because I learned long ago, and here's why I learned that. Nobody really taught me that. It was just something I stumbled upon because I realized that life is always busy. The schedule will always get filled up with all kinds of stuff. And before you know it, you don't even know what you're doing. You're running around and you're all over the place and all that. And you kind of look back and you're like, well, I was insanely busy, but I don't really know what I'm doing. I don't feel any further along or better off than I was. And I began to realize that as life gets really busy, right, that all of the extra things that you could do in there kind of start falling off the wayside. So as a parent, right, it was, well, gosh, all those things that we want to do with our kids, if we're not careful, it just kind of gets relegated to, well, when's soccer, when's this, when's that. And so only the big things are on there. But all the other stuff to do with your kiddos aren't on there, right? It's like, well, hold on. When am I going to just play with them? When am I going to hang out and be there for them and do that? And I realized that if I don't think about it and schedule it, it's not going to happen. Something else will suck it up. Something else will take over. Or I'll just get kind of lazy. And I'll just be like, kind of come home and plop down and like, I don't really want to do anything. Like, wait a minute, I've got to make sure that I'm being intentional. So you've got to schedule for success. In your notes, here's a thought for you. Don't just prioritize your schedule, but schedule your priorities. That's an old Stephen Covey thing, if you're familiar with that. Right? Don't prioritize your schedule. Schedule your priorities. Most people look at their schedule and say, okay, what do we have to do? What do I have? What's on the schedule? Let's just prioritize it. And I go, okay, but what about the things that are going to move the needle forward for your life? What about those experiences with family, friends, yourself? What are you going to do to be intentional about that? So don't just look at what you've got and say, okay, let me try to fit it all in. Kind of look outside of even that and say, what isn't in my schedule? What isn't reflected in there that's very important in my life? That if I'm not careful, I'll just miss it. So schedule those priorities in there. Don't just reshuffle your priorities already in there and just kind of say, okay, well, here it is. I've got priorities. Let me just kind of schedule those. No, let me make sure that my priorities are going into there, and then we begin to fit everything else. Right? So think about that in your notes. Now, as you do that, is you begin to get intentional about what your life looks like. What are you doing to fill it with experiences that are going to help you grow? By the way, side note, some of these experiences you may not want to do. Right? There are some things on there that you may need to even schedule in just because you're like, I probably would never do that. But I know that it's probably something important, whether it's for somebody else or whether it's my own, just out of my comfort zone. What am I going to do to kind of push myself? If we only did the things we're comfortable doing, guys, we wouldn't do a whole lot. Right? We just wouldn't. And so sometimes we need to schedule in there some things that are going to push us, challenge us a little bit. Like, I'm not sure if I really want to do that. Right? But knowing that if I'm creating opportunity in my schedule for God to show up because I'm allowing myself and putting myself out there. So sometimes that's saying, I'm busy. I don't really have time to go serve and do that, but I know I need to. I know it's something that's probably part of giving back. And if I don't get intentional, it's never going to happen because it's not something that I necessarily look forward to. I'm just using an example. All the more you've got to schedule some of those things and push yourself to do it even when you're uncomfortable. Even put things out there that push you a little bit. Maybe overcoming some fears and doing some things you're like, gosh, I would normally not do that, but I know for my growth, I've got to push myself. So you've got to look at the things that you want to fill your time up with that are going to give you experiences and some of the things that might be a little uncomfortable for you to do. And here's why. In your notes, because you've got to believe when you show up that it's a setup. Here's what I mean by that. That when you begin to have experiences in life where you begin to open up opportunities for you to do things, you just got to believe and say, God, if I show up, I just believe it's a setup and you're going to use it somehow, some way. Now, that's just something I learned long ago. Was, because there was a lot of things that I was doing and a part of where it was real easy to kind of get negative and go, I don't want to be here. I don't really want to do this. We kind of get in a bad attitude, right? Especially if like a significant other drug us into it, right? And we're like, I really don't want to be here, right? But they do, so I'll go along with it. I guess only I've experienced that, but anyway, right? So we've all been there. But what I began to realize is that, well, wait a minute, if I'm there, I might as well be all there. I might as well just show up. Because usually those moments are kind of a setup, right? They're a setup for God to kind of say, hey, there's just something little that you're going to get here. I remember years ago, my wife, she scheduled us to go to this planetarium in Indianapolis, like at midnight. It was some opening where you would be able to see, Jupiter and all these things or something. And our kids were little, and it was like it started at midnight. I was like, oh, man, we're going to get home so late. We had something early the next day. And I remember, I went with it. I was compliant, right? But having a bad attitude on the inside, right? Just like, I really don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Couldn't we have done this another day? This just seems so much. And I remember going into it, and we walked in there and, went through the whole experience, and it was incredible. Like, it was awesome. In fact, it was so cool. And in one of the books that I wrote, Faithology, I call it the Jupiter phenomenon, because the guy got up and he started talking about Jupiter, and he started giving all these facts about Jupiter. And I was like, my mind was, and I'm seeing God in all of this. Right, here's a little snippet example is Jupiter, that basically, because it's so large in the gravitational pull, it protects Earth from so many asteroids and that come through. Because what it does is everything that's coming through, all the debris, it's so large that it sucks it in, and it absorbs the impact so that Earth is protected. It's positioned almost perfectly to protect Earth. It's fascinating. And I thought, wow. And then he went on these other things, and I'm thinking, God is like our Jupiter, right? Like he's, our protector and that. And even so much so that I'm writing all these notes like, this is so good, this is amazing, God's speaking to me. So much so that I even wrote about it and put it together and stuff that I teach. And I would have missed all of that if I would have just been a lazy, complaining dude, right? And said, I just want to sit on the couch tonight and not go out late. And missed that experience that God downloaded so much to me. And I just went, wow, God, you're so amazing. You're even more of just how incredible and precise you are to create the universe and the galaxy and all that stuff. Like, it was just so cool. And I would have missed that because I wasn't creating that opportunity in my life. So I want you to think about that every time you show up, that it's a setup in your life. Now, I'm going to kind of show you this idea of this wheel of life is what Paul J. Meyer did. He was kind of a life coach, and he kind of did this wheel of life kind of concept. And basically it was just this exercise that he would walk people through to identify the different spheres and domains of their life. Now, that's up to you to think about the different domains of your life. Maybe there's a social component. Maybe there's a faith component to that. Maybe there's, being a parent or, being a grandparent or a mom or dad or a husband or wife or whatever. Maybe it's finances. Maybe it's something else. But you just basically kind of think through what are the different domains that I want in life? What does that look like? Now, for me, I'll just give you mine. I call it F6. I kind of came up with these years ago, right? I like things starting with the same letters, you can tell, and all the teaching and all that. So I just came up with these categories of life for me. One was finances. One was fun, right? Just having hobby, enjoying life, and doing the things that give us energy in that. Another one was fitness. Another one was family. Another one is faith. And another one was friends, which is kind of that social arena. Now, these are kind of the 6 domains in my life. So I actually have a system where I actually set goals in these 6 different areas. But basically what Paul J. Meyer was talking about was think about different domains of your life. This is a good example maybe. Maybe you have more. Maybe you can kind of think of it. And he basically said if you think about a wheel, in order for that wheel to run really smooth, it has to have all these spokes and it has to be circular well. And he basically went through this exercise to say, well, fill in the wheel on how well you think you're doing in those areas. So for me, right, I might say, okay, well, finances are about right here, right? I'm learning how to be better with my finances, honor God with those, and be wise with that. Fun, maybe it's a little bit lower. Haven't been taking time to do hobbies. Fitness, that doesn't even exist, okay? Right, family, right? Like maybe it's over here. Like I'm trying to do everything I can. You get the point. My faith, okay, I'm really trying to grow that. I'm being intentional. I got a growth plan. And friends, maybe my social life is, I'm so busy doing things that it's low. Now, if you think about this, take the outer ring out and just look at that wheel. Would that wheel be running pretty smooth? No, it'd be clunky. I mean, you're doing well here, here, and here, but you got a lot of room over here. That wheel is just going to be kind of clunky. And your life gets a little bit clunky when you get out of rhythm, when you start getting caught up in one domain of life, but you're not really creating all those other experiences. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of people that I see that, they may have faith and maybe their social life is really good, right? They're doing a lot, but they're neglecting their family or maybe themselves of just fun and hobbies and taking care of themselves, right? Maybe it's fitness and that, as you can kind of see, right? The spokes, the wheels coming off over here, okay? But you get the point. Now, this exercise, one, is just a self-awareness to say, how am I doing? If I have to be honest with myself, what does that look like? But even more important than just self-awareness, it's turning that into, what are some things that I better do over here to get a little bit more balanced? What are some things I need to be doing over here and here that probably need a little bit of attention in my life? Or maybe it's finances, or maybe faith is small. You get the point. Now, these are just domains that I came up with. But I would encourage you to think about, what are the different spheres of your life? What does that look like? Maybe it's just a few for now. Maybe it's just by roles. Oh, being a grandparent, being a worker here in my job or in my role. Or maybe it's, something to do. You could even do this like if you got kids, right? You got multiple kids or grandkids or that. How am I doing with loving on them and spending time with them and that? So again, you can apply this wheel of life to like anything. Right? You could even take one domain in finances and say, how am I doing in some different domains? What does that look like? Saving, giving, investing, right? Making more money, doing this, tithing, whatever it is. You could even kind of drill into that and say, how am I doing in this? Oh my goodness, my wheel is way off in some of these other areas, right? Like all these other areas barely exist. You get the point. So I would encourage you to think about this wheel of life in your own kind of, application of what would those different domains be. Get specific. Get some self-awareness to say, am I living life experiencing all the different things that life has to offer? Does that make sense? Am I creating opportunity in the different areas of life so that I don't get stuck in one and get stuck in a rut? Because you will tend to get stuck in the one that you're most comfortable with, that you like the most, or whatever it is, or that you spend the most time in, obviously. Right? You'll get stuck there, and if you're not careful, your balance of life will get so off. Yeah, you're filling your life up with these experiences, but you're missing all these opportunities for God to set you up, to show up, to teach you and use those, because you need all of these. You need all of these working in your favor to be all that God has called you to do. He doesn't just want you focusing on one thing. He's saying, look, I've called you to live life and live life to the fullest abundantly. Now, what does that mean? Think about that. We've always heard that as like a real motivational thing. Like, I've called you to live life and live it abundantly, like blessed and, overflowing with goodness and all that. Well, that's a good interpretation. I would agree. But how about look at it from a different angle? I've called you to live life to the fullest, abundantly, in every area of life that you're giving your all to. Does that make sense? That's a little different take on that scripture, right? It's not so much about God's going to make me overflow with so much goodness and, financially, he's just going to abundantly bless me. It's like, well, maybe, but could it be that God is saying, I've called you to live life, and not just life, but life to the fullest, abundantly, meaning that you are surrounded by all the domains in your life that I've called you to live and express and live to the fullest. I think that was more of a challenge by God than it was just kind of a promise. That's just me. Right? I mean, I still think it was a good promise from God, right? It's very inspiring. But to me, it's almost a challenge to say, I've called you to live life abundantly to the fullest. Oh, not sure if I'm doing that, God. What do I need to do to maximize that? This is a great exercise that will just help you kind of get into that mode. So think about that wheel of life. You've got kind of a fill in the blank in your workbook. You can obviously draw this out. You might have more domains in there, right? There's just kind of 6 on here, but you might have some others. But I want you to think about that on your own time. Maybe go home and mark that down as an exercise to think about, hey, what are the domains of my life that are really important? Categorize those. Think about those. Mine are just kind of general things, right? F6 with friends, finances, fun, fitness, family, and faith, and those things. But you might have something different. So create opportunity. That's the very first thing that we got to do. Schedule it. Make sure that we're being intentional about all areas of our life. So create opportunities so that they're setups for God to show up and speak to us. The second thing we got to think about with experiences is connect them. That's on your next page. Connect them. And here's what I mean by connecting them, right? If you think about this idea in your notes, every experience contains something that you need. Now think about this. Every experience that you have in your life, okay? So if this is the experience, whatever this is, that you had in your life, there is something within that experience that you need. Something vital that you've got to extract from that experience. In fact, I'm convinced one of the things that I've learned to do, again, by going to that planetarium and 1,000 other things that it took me a while to get to, was, okay, God, everywhere I'm at, whether I like it, whether I don't like it, whether I'm like, why am I here? What am I doing? How did I get here? Or I've created it and I love it and I'm ready for it. Regardless, everything that I go to, one of the things I try to condition myself is, what is it that I need from this? Because I just believe that everything that happens in life, there's something there that God is giving you an opportunity to extract something from. There's something that you need. Now, you may not know it. Meaning that, like, I don't know why I need that exactly, but let me just hold on to that. You know, we talked about this last week. Remember that? How we've kind of read something. Have you ever kind of learned something? And then, amazingly, in the next few days, God brings up an opportunity for you to talk about that or share that. And that's just the way God is. So every experience that you have, I believe God is like, okay, there's a seed in here that if you can get, I'm going to use it down the line one day. If you'll be ready for it, if you'll be intentional about it. Remember the movie Apollo 13? I love in that movie, right, where obviously Apollo 13, the mission, when they're in space and they can't get back, right, they run all kinds of, disasters, and they're not sure how they're going to get them back. I mean, this is a true story, right? And in the movie, there's this great scene. Billy Bob Thornton is the NASA head guy, whatever his title is, and he brings all the engineers into the room. It's a great scene. It's so classic. And he throws out like all these parts, just like random parts that are inside the space shuttle. And he says, all right, boys, working with just this, we got to get them home. This is all they've got up there. We got to figure out a way to get them back home with just these parts. And they just replicated the things that would be in the space shuttle that would be there. And so the engineers had to go to work and just sit there and go, okay, we got to work with all these random pieces and put them all together and connect them and figure out some insanely creative way to get them back home. And they did, right? It was a phenomenal story, true story. And I love that. I think, wow, could you imagine the pressure and the intensity of being in that room as an engineer and being like, okay, this is not the ideal situation. Like, we need this, and we need a flux capacitor, right? Sorry, that was my Back to the Future reference, right? We need 121 gigawatts to get them back. How are we going to do this? Like, they don't have that. All they've got is this stuff. But they were able to use everything that they had to create something to get them back. I remember watching that again. I would say this is an experience, right? This is one of those moments where I'm just having fun watching a movie, but lo and behold, right? I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, that's how God works in our life. That sometimes all these things that just seem so fragmented, they were like, I don't know how all this fits. I don't know how this experience or this vacation or this little outing or this terrible thing that happened over here or this frustrating thing that happened. I mean, how is that going to serve my good? How is that going to... And yet God has this way of like being this engineer that just says everything that you're experiencing is all part of getting you on your mission. But you've got to do the diligence to figure out how to make it all work. See, I believe God gives you what you need, but he doesn't just roll out the red carpet and just, hallelujah. Like, God requires us to partner together, to lean in. It's kind of like your kids, right? If you've got kiddos, you know that, when you're trying to teach them, you don't just do it all for them, right? You got to let them kind of learn. You got to let them kind of do it. That's how they learn. I think that's how God is with us. Could he just roll out the red carpet and say, look, here it is, here I've got? Yeah, it'd be easy, it'd be amazing, but we wouldn't learn, we wouldn't grow. We would never develop into what he's called us to be because he would just, be handing us things all the time. No, we learn and we grow. So we've got to take all these experiences and kind of connect the dots. First, we've got to extract from all these experiences in life, right, all over the place. Sometimes it feels like this. They're just everywhere. We have all these experiences. Even in a given day, you've probably got 100 experiences that take place in one given day. And every one has a little seed that you could extract. Little seed that you could extract. I won't go through all of them, but you get the point. There's a seed in every one. And then what I believe is the next step in knowing, okay, what is the seed? It's being able then to connect the dots and play the game. Remember the old school connect the dot kind of game? You know, you had all these, different patterns and all that. And you'd have all these numbers and all these random dots, and you'd start kind of going through and connect the dot, and at the end you're like, whoa, it created a flower, or, it created an airplane or something like that. I don't know. Nobody ever played connect the dots? You with me? Okay. So, and I think that's how God is. God kind of gives us this kind of fragmented life, appearingly so, kind of fragmented, like why this and why did this happen, and here, and whether we created it, whether we didn't, right? All those things, they're all kind of seem everywhere. Like, why? I don't understand. This isn't part of the plan. What is the purpose of that? But if we'll lean in, every one of these have a purpose. And then if we'll begin to connect the dots and say, okay, God, how are you going to use this and when? And let me just be prepared for it. You'll see God start to create this kind of beautiful picture where all this fragmented connect the dot numbers all start turning into this picture now. And you go, oh, are you with me? I mean, and you've experienced this, right? In just little ways in your life where you're like, I wasn't sure how this would ever tie in. I don't know why I went through that 10 years ago now, but I can see now that I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through that. Right? Not that it was great, not that I wanted to go through it, but I can see how God, what the enemy meant for evil, I can see how God has turned it into something good. That's because this is what God does. He just connects the dots. He engineers anything at all times, and everything is part of this incredible plan that he's orchestrating and he's putting into your life, and he's using it for the good if we'll allow him to do it and we'll partner with him to do it. Because if we don't partner with him, it just looks fragmented. We just kind of go, I don't know what it is. We kind of set it aside. No. Connect the dots. Because if you'll start connecting them, you'll start seeing how it all makes sense, how it all comes together. Okay? In your notes, Proverbs 24:32. I love this. Solomon said, I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. It's such a simple verse, right? But think about this. I applied my heart to what I observed and learned a lesson from what I saw. I looked at the fragmented mess, at all the experiences, and because I applied my heart and observed, I learned a lesson from the things that I went through. So in your notes, here's what I want you to think about, is be a student, not a critic. Be a student, not a critic. What does a critic do? Tears apart everything, judges everything, tells you if it's good or bad. 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down. Siskel and Ebert say it's 2 thumbs up, right? Are they even still around? I don't even know. All right. Some of you are like, who in the world is Siskel and Ebert? All right. A critic sits there and judges something, rates it, scores it, tells you if it's good or bad, right, and all that. But what does a student do? A student doesn't do it. A student just learns. And I think so many times in life, we're judging all these experiences that we go through. And we're determining if it's good, if it's bad. Oh, didn't want that. Oh, yeah. 2 thumbs down, right? Like negative 5-star review. Like, yeah, that was terrible, right? Or this was great. This was amazing. 2 thumbs up, 5-star review. And we can go through life. And what happens when we start being more of a critic than a student, we again start missing all this because we go, well, I'll take that one. I'll take that one, 5 stars. 2 thumbs up over there. The rest, that's for the birds, right? Like 2 thumbs down. But a student looks at it and just says, no, I'm not going to critique it. I'm not going to say whether it's good or bad or whatever it is. It is what it is. Again, not why did it happen, what am I going to do with what happened? I'm just going to turn it into a lesson. Now, that's easier said than done, I understand, especially when some of these are really, really hard experiences. I'm not making light of that by any means. But I just know that if we approach it like a critic, nothing will come out of it. We miss it altogether. And so not only do you go through something incredibly hard and bad, if you will, on the outside, we don't get anything from it. So it just serves no purpose versus saying there has to be something in here that God is orchestrating. Vernon Howard, the famous author, said this: always walk through life as if you have something new to learn, and you will. I like that. Just always walk through life like you have something new to learn. And guess what will happen? You will. You'll learn everywhere you go, right? There's an old statement, if you've been in education, you know this. It says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. You ever heard that? When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. If you're hungry to learn, you'll learn everywhere you go. Everybody's a teacher. Everywhere you go, you'll learn something. So when the student is hungry, when the student is willing to learn, right, the teacher will appear all over the place. So become more like a student. Romans 8:28, you know, that's one of my favorite verses of the entire Bible. And we know that in what things? All things. Wait. Even the 5-star negative reviews, 2 thumbs down? Like, you're just talking about the 5-star reviews and 2 thumbs up, right? No. In all things, every experience, everything in this randomness of life, so it seems, in all things, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. See, God, again, will just take all of this stuff that seems so not fitting, doesn't make sense. It didn't go with your plan. It didn't go with the way that you saw it turning out completely. But he'll say, no. If you'll hang with me, it's all part of a picture that I'm building and putting together. If you'll hang in there, it's all part of what I'm creating. Corrie ten Boom, the Holocaust survivor, such an incredible story. She wrote this, "Life is but a weaving." And this is a famous, in fact, in the museum there, she has this picture. And on one side, you see this sort of crown that's very beautiful, that was a tapestry that she made. But then you look on the back side, and you know this to be true if you do like cross-stitching or some stuff like that. Look at the back side of that. It looks chaotic. It looks like a mess, right? You can kind of see the outline of the shape, but you're like, I don't know. It just looks chaotic. And I think this is the different views that God sees this like, oh, I've got a crown. Like, it all works together for the good. It all comes together in these beautiful stars and imagery and this crown. But we're looking at it from this other side going, what? You know, like, that looks chaotic. Like, that looks like, throw that away, like, it doesn't seem like anything. And if you don't take time to connect the dots, create them and then connect them, you'll live life like on the backside of the tapestry. And you'll always just be going, it makes no sense. It's chaos, doesn't make sense. But if you'll change your perspective to God's and allow him to use those experiences, all of a sudden now things will start coming into view. I'm not saying immediately, but over time, God will start giving you that God perspective so that you begin to grow and say, oh, all this was for me to grow. It was all part of this incredible tapestry that God put together. Here's what Corrie ten Boom wrote in Life is but a Weaving. I love this. My life is but a weaving between my God and me. I cannot choose the colors. He weaveth steadily. Oftentimes he weaveth sorrow, and I in foolish pride forget he sees the upper, and I the underside. Not till the loom is silent and the shuttles cease to fly will God unroll the canvas and reveal the reason why. The dark threads are as needful in the weaver's skillful hand as the threads of gold and silver and the pattern he has planned. He knows, he loves, he cares. Nothing this truth can dim. He gives the very best to those who leave the choice to him. Isn't that beautiful? And gosh, her story of the Holocaust and just unfathomable, right? That anyone could walk away from those experiences and have that perspective of life. You talk about someone who saw the most arguably chaotic, insane experiences of life that are almost unimaginable and just looked like they were terrible tragedies, and were. And for someone to be able to see the perspective of God is like, who am I, right? To complain about my experiences, right? Not to belittle any of our relative experiences in life, but it's like, gosh, if someone that can go through some of the most horrific experiences of life and be able to come out there, right? I think, gosh, that's what God's looking for in all of us, is to be able to do that. So we've got to connect the dots. The last thing that I want you to think about with experiences is convert them, okay? So we create it by making sure we're scheduling opportunities all the time in all the different domains of life. We're not just getting caught up in one, right? I mean, I've scheduled golf 6 times a week, right? It's great. My wheel is full over there, right? But everything else is not, okay? So we make sure that we spread out our experiences. We begin to understand through our perspective that we be a student, not a critic, that everything that happens to us, we're trying to look for that seed that we can learn from and know that God is connecting them somehow, even when we don't get it sometimes, that he's going to use it. Somehow it's serving this purpose. But that third step is we've got to convert these. And when I say convert, it's almost like we've got to turn the tapestry around. Every needle that kind of comes through that looks chaotic, we've got to make sure that we turn that tapestry around and convert that and say, oh, this was what it was for. Okay, so here's some thoughts about converting our experiences in life. Is this, in your notes, experience is not the best teacher. Educated experience is. You've may heard the phrase that experience is the best teacher. Well, that's not true. Experience is not the best teacher. Educated experiences. And there's a massive difference between experience and educated experience. See, anybody can experience something, but not everybody grows through that experience. Does that make sense? Think about the children of Israel, right? They had an experience not getting into the promised land, and they repeated that 39 times, and so 40 years in the desert. They didn't get it. They didn't learn from it. They kept experiencing the same thing, right? Disobedience to God and all these things. And it was like, okay, you kind of did that once for a year, and you didn't learn the lesson. You experienced it. You didn't learn, so you just repeated it another 39 times until you could figure it out. And I think this is what a lot of people do in life. You know this to be true, right? We're not getting it. And you know this because you can look at people in your life. I won't even talk about you right now, so don't even worry about looking in the mirror. But when you look at others, you know all kinds of people around you that you go, they just don't get it, right? They're not getting it. Like, how many times does it have to happen, right? And to you, you're like, this is so clear. It's so simple. Like, seriously? But you can't tell them, right? Because they just don't see it. They're going to argue with you. But like for everybody else, it's so easy just to kind of go, you're not learning from your experience, right? But here's the problem. Every time you're looking at all those people, you're doing the same thing, but you don't know it. You just are, right? And listen, isn't it ironic that there's so many people in your life that you could look at and say this about, but you look over yourself, right? Like, if 9 of the 10 people in the room, I'm one of them, 9 other people, they're just not getting it. They just keep doing the same thing and they don't get it. Well, you're part of the 10. You're just like them. You don't get it either. So we've got to understand that we all suffer from this idea that it's one thing to go through something. It's a whole other thing to grow through it, right? In fact, in your notes, there's my fill in the blank, right? It's not what we've experienced that shapes us. It's what we've learned from our experiences that truly shape us, right? Your experiences don't shape you. Your growth from it shapes you. You don't go through situations, you grow through them. And I think there's a lot of people that are just going through situations, but they're not growing through them because they haven't converted those lessons into something that they can learn and get into. So in your notes, convert experiences into action. Convert your experiences into action, meaning do something with it. Now, when I learned going to the planetarium, okay, just using that example, I didn't have a great attitude about it, but I went, and here God's downloading to me. Now, for me, this is just an example for me. what do I do with that? Well, one, I began to convert that. I literally was writing things down in the moment, like on my little like planner that they gave us or pamphlet or whatever it was. And I was my wife. I'm like, hey, do you have a pen? She had a pen in her purse, and I'm just like writing notes. I'm like, wow, this is so good. And I was able to come back and think about that. Say, God, one, turn that into worship. God, thank you. You're like our Jupiter. You protect us. You keep us. You're a shield about us is what your word says. Wow, I can see how all this connects and how you even displayed it in the universe and all these scriptures about how, God, you're a shield around us and that. And then, for me, I was able to say, well, what can I do to take that? I'm going to share that. Again, remember, we talked about this last week. Take your learning and share it with others. It's part of your growth process. Don't just keep it in. So for me, it was beginning to talk about it with other people. Hey, can you believe what I learned the other day? We were at this planetarium. You know, they said this. I was able to encourage others, right? Just with that same thought. They go, wow, that's incredible. That's really cool. And then write about it. And then do some messages on it and, you know, and all the things I've been able to use that with. Now, that's just for me, but it was a way that I could turn that into action. Now, it may not be something like that. It may be more for me. Maybe there's something that happens in your life or in my life, and I just convert it into a learning lesson for me to say, well, how can I put that into action somehow? So again, remember last week we talked about don't let your learning lead to knowledge, let it lead to action. Do something, right? Live out what you're learning about. Don't just learn about it. God's not like, I just want you to be really smart and educated. He's like, no, I want you to be full so that you can go be a blessing to others. So you got to think about, how do I take what I'm learning about and convert it into action? So and this only you can answer that. This is why you've got to get intentional to say, I've got to do something for it. I love this. In your notes, I love this kind of anonymous kind of poem. Listen to this. This is so good. I asked for strength, and God gave me difficulties to make me strong. Whoa. I asked for wisdom, and God gave me problems to solve. I asked for prosperity, and God gave me brawn and brains to work. I asked for courage, and God gave me dangers to overcome. I asked for patience, and God placed me in situations where I was forced to wait. I asked for love, and God gave me troubled people to help. I asked for favors, and God gave me opportunities. I asked for everything so I could enjoy life. Instead, he gave me life so I could enjoy everything. I received nothing I wanted, but I received everything that I needed. Isn't that good? Man, I remember reading that years ago. I thought, whoa, that's challenging too. Because I think a lot of times we say, God, give me strength. And then we wonder, why aren't we strong? And it's like, well, because God gives you strength by putting you in difficult situations. God, I need to be more patient. Help me with that. And then, you know, the next moment, you're on the road. Right? And somebody, you know, you get road rage, right? Somebody does something crazy. Boy, do you have a moment to practice it, right? Like, that's how God delivers. Like, he doesn't just go, okay, here's patience. Oh, I'm a patient person. I'm just strolling along now. It's all good. Oh, God gave me strength. I don't suffer from anything, depression, anxiety, or any kind of feelings of being overwhelmed anymore. Never. No. God doesn't just give you something and you magically have it. You develop it, right? He gives you opportunities to act out those things and practice it. Listen, all those things we talked about, strength, patience, wisdom, right? All these things, it's all a muscle. It's all a muscle that you just got to develop. And God says, well, I'll give you the seed, but you got to partner with me. You got to water. You got to take care of that thing. Remember, even Paul talked about this in the scripture. I don't have it referenced, but, you know, Paul talked about, he said, you know, I came along and planted the seed. Apollos watered the seed, one of the other disciples. And he said, but God provided the increase. And notice about that progression. God didn't plant it. God didn't water it, but he provided the growth, the increase. And I think that's because God says, well, I want to partner with you, right? You're not just a robot, right? He's not just going to like, I'll give you strength. You're strong. Go through all things now. It's like, no, I'll do something supernatural, but I need your natural to make it supernatural. Are you with me? You got to step up. You got to plant. You got to water. You got to work that thing. You want patience? Okay. I'll give you opportunities where you get to practice being patient. And if you'll plant and water that thing, and if you'll be faithful with that, then I'll bring some super into that natural and I'll start doing something. So you start learning and growing and overcoming. And through that, you'll become more patient. Not because you magically woke up patient one day, but because you worked it out, right? The Bible says, I mean, think about this. Our salvation, which is a free gift from God, no doubt, 100%. Nothing you can do to earn it, get it. It's a free gift. But you know the Bible says to work out your salvation with fear and trembling. You know that? Now, that's not a negative thing. But it's like, look, you have salvation. It's yours. But work it out. Make it good. Like, live up to the potential of that. Work it to make the best. I mean, it's yours. It's a free gift. But you got to do something with that gift. It's kind of like your kids. You know, you give them a gift. Like, we got our little guy, Isaiah, the other day, a slime kit. You know, why? I don't know. Every time as parents we buy this stuff, I'm like, why? Why do we do this? Why do we do this? Our whole house is going to be ruined. And we got him a slime kit, right? Like all this, and he loves slime, and, you know. So we got it out, and I'm thinking, oh, my gosh, this is so complex, right? I got to mix all these things and all this stuff. But, you know, Isaiah got the gift. He was so excited about it. He got the gift. It's his. But you got to work at it. You got to mix all the activators and the glue and put in the baking soda and all this stuff and mix it together. And, you know, and sometimes you're like, okay, let me do it better next time. And I think that's how God works. He's like, look, you got the gift. I gave you salvation. But you got to work it out with fear and trembling. You got to give your all to this thing to maximize it and utilize it to its fullest potential. Does that make sense? And that's when you convert those experiences into action. So utilize the things that God is giving you. In your notes, on the next page, Triple R Planner. Here's how you can do that real quick. Then we're going to jump into the P. 3 things, I call it the Triple R Plan. Here's 3 things that I want you to think about. Number 1 is this, reflect. Here's what I would encourage you to do somehow, some way. In your notes, end your day with a game of connect the dots. Every day you've got an opportunity to end your day with a game of connect the dots. Now, some days it might be easier, some days it might be a little bit harder. But what I want to encourage you to do is, this is a discipline, is before you go to bed at night, whatever, you don't have to spend an enormous amount of time. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's 30 minutes. Take some time before you go to bed. And you can do this in 1,000 different ways. You could journal. If you don't like the journal or that, you could just think, just make some mental notes, write some things down. I mean, whatever. Just do whatever makes sense for you and leans into something that you would like to do or challenge yourself to do. But I want you to end your day by reflecting every day. God, help me connect the dots from the day today, from the day today. What happened today? Just go back through your day. I do this all the time. Just go back through the day. A meeting that I had. How'd that go? What's something I can extract from that? Sometimes, be honest with you, I'll go through and I'll go, I don't really know. It is what it was, right? I don't, there's nothing major that I can just pull out of it upon my review right now, right? And so I just kind of move on to the next thing. I don't overthink it and, spend forever. But just go back through your day and just think through, what are some things that I can connect the dots to today? What did I learn today? What is it that I can extract from today and turn into some action? So just make that part of your daily routine, part of your growth plan. At the end of the day, just reflect, end the day with a game of connect the dots. Number 2, when you do this, is refine. So reflect and then refine. Never walk away from an experience without insight. So refine it. Again, it's part of that extraction. What happened today? What meeting did I go to? What about at work? What about this interaction with this person? What about when I did this? What's something I can learn from that? What's something I can pull away? And then refine that. Get it into kind of some insight on, okay, here's maybe a word, and boil it down to a word that I learned today, right? Patience. I think that was patience. I think God was teaching me that. I think God was teaching me how to be more caring, right? I flew through that. I didn't give my family the time, and I was just so in another place. I've got to work on slowing down and just care. So boil that down or refine it into just something simple, right, that you can say, that's the thing that I need to pull away and work on today. And then the third thing is reform. Reflect, refine, reform. Give yourself new challenges, right? So think about, okay, what did I learn today? Let me refine that into some simple things. And then what can I do to work on that? What's specific that I'm going to do to work on that, to kind of turn that into some action? Does that make sense? And I just call that the Triple R Plan. Reflect, refine, reform in those experiences. If you do that, I'm telling you, you're going to start extracting so much more out of life, right? Now, don't beat yourself up. I'm not saying if you don't do this every single night in a regimented way or all that. Just, look, I don't care if you do it 3 times a week. 3 times is better than 0, right? I'd rather you have a 10% increase in your life, in my life, of just spending time reflecting. It's that much more we're closer to pulling out. Now, the more you can be intentional and discipline yourself, I believe the more God's just going to apply. Remember we talked about last week? The more you apply what you're learning, the more God will apply to your learning, right? So when you apply what you're learning, God will just keep applying to your learning. He'll just keep giving you more. He'll be like, oh, you're being faithful. You're extracting. You're really intentional about this. I'm going to give you more. I'm going to give you more opportunity. I'm going to give you more of that. I'm going to open up bigger doors for you now. So when you're faithful with that little, God will keep opening it up, okay? All right. So experiences. Remember, our experiences are what life is made of. Life is a classroom. Connect the dots. Your homework is to think about that wheel of life, number 1, is kind of create that in your own life. What are those categories? Just rate yourself. What do you need to do to maybe amp up some areas? Schedule that in your life. And then your second part is I want you to think about this triple R plan. What's your rhythm going to be? Maybe it's when you wake up. Maybe it's when you go to bed. Whatever. But think about some sort of a discipline that you're going to do each day. Maybe it's part of your growth plan time. Remember we talked about that last week, carving out some time. Maybe you just take a few minutes to just reflect over the last day or a few days and just say, God, what are some things I can pull from what you taught me? So think about how you're going to do that, what that rhythm looks like for you. I would encourage you to try to work in like a nightly routine just to think about that, okay? All right, let's jump over to P, second part. People. How do people play a part into our growth plan? This is huge. So we talked about resources last week. It's a big one. We talked about experiences and getting everything from them. And then people. If we can get these 3 things in our growth plan, maybe not limited to, but the way that I see it, if these are the 3 areas that we learn: resources, experiences, and the people that we're surrounded by. If we can get those 3 things going, you're firing on all cylinders here for growth. Okay? So people, in your notes. I love this. We cannot reach our potential alone. We need others to help draw out the best from us. That's a fact. You will never reach your potential on your own. It's 100% fact. Everybody needs somebody to pull out things from them. Proverbs 27:17, you know this if you grew up in church, is iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. If you're going to get sharp, it takes another person, right? Like iron sharpens iron. It's not going to happen on its own. It takes someone else working with you, okay? Now, in your notes, you've got to understand we were created for community. This is why we know that we'll never reach our potential alone. Why? Because God created us for community. That's a fact. He created us to work together, to be a part, community, right? Think about what was the very first thing that Jesus did when he started his ministry. Very first act that he did, not miracle, just the first thing that he did. He assembled a team and surrounded himself with a group of people when he called the disciples. The very first thing that he did is he built a team around him of people that he called to live with him and be their rabbi, for them to be the disciple, the student, and live life. So the very first thing that Jesus did when he starts off his ministry is he just builds a group of people in community. So I want you to understand that we've got to know that we're created for community. More in surf, this is fascinating, at Northwestern University. They did a study in neuroscience years ago, and I'm going to read this to you. It's in your notes. It says, the more we study engagement, we see time and again that just being next to certain people actually aligns your brains with them. Now, that could be good news or bad news, depending on who you're around, okay? This means the people you hang out with actually have an impact on your engagement with reality beyond what you can explain. And one of the effects is you become alike. Think about this. They did brain scans on this. And they would put people into a room, and they would scan them from a neurological kind of picture. and they would see what would begin to happen. And the longer that people would sit into a room together, they would have them do different functions in that, the more that their brain waves would begin to come in sync with each other. It's crazy, right? And the more they would start mapping to each other's, and they would start mirroring it. It's absolutely fascinating. Now, I think that I joke about, that could be a good thing or a bad thing, right? But isn't this why the scripture talks about bad company corrupts good character? Right? Like who we surround ourselves with. And I don't mean from an outreach, reaching out to those, but truly surround ourselves with. Those that we come in community with makes a vital impact on us. Right? It affects us, not just spiritually, but physiologically. It can affect us. Right? And so we've got to be really intentional about the people. And I think it underscores how God created us for community. How important it is that we understand that the people that we surround ourselves with, how vital that becomes for growth, for us to experience all that God has. Now, there's 3 people that you need in your life, okay? I'm going to give you this kind of idea of kind of the 360 kind of concept here, okay? So if this is you, okay, there are 3 people, so to speak, or groups of people, I should say, that you're going to need in your life, okay? We'll put 2 on either one there just to say it can be multiple people. 360 that you need in your life, okay? Here's what they are, and then we're going to break them down. The first kind of people that you've got to have in your life, and I would even argue this is order of importance. Number 1 is mentors. You've got to have mentors in your life. People above you, further along than you, which we'll talk about in a minute. Here's why. They reveal to us where we should be going. In your notes, they reveal to us where we should be going. Mentors help guide us to where we should be going in our growth, direction, wisdom. They've been there, done that. They can pour back into us. They're our guide, so to speak, that helps us become better. You'll never be your best without mentors in your life. 100% fact. In fact, I could go all throughout the Bible and talk about how every relationship that you look at in the scriptures, you will see mentorship all throughout Scripture, Old Testament to New Testament. You'll see it all the time, all the time. The second thing that I'm going to call is this. I'm going to call them mates because I got to have an M. Mates, and what I mean by mates is not your mate like, spouse. Mates, friends, right? People around us that we're kind of on the same plane with, same season of life maybe, right? They're just kind of on a level playing field with where we are and what we're experiencing, what we're going through. Here's why. They relate to us where we're at. You got to have those people that are kind of in that season of life that you're in. They're right where you're at in their growth journey so that you can live together and kind of help each other out, be there for each other, and they relate with us. And that's necessary for us to understand that. The last one is this. Down here is what I call mentees. Mentees are people that you are mentoring, right? They're a mentee. They're not a mentor. They're a mentee. They're receiving mentorship or guidance from you, okay? You've got to have these people because, in your notes, they remind us of where we've been. Now, hang with me on this, okay? Because I would say most people in their life only have mates, at best. Now, if they don't have a real social life and they're not in community and connecting with other people, they may not even have that. They may have a mate, right, like a significant other or something like that, but they don't really have mates, people that are in that same season of life. I would say that most people, if they have anything, it's all right here. Very few people have mentors. And I would say the least amount of people have mentees, people that they're guiding and raising up and challenging. And this is kind of a tragedy because God absolutely wired us to have all 3 of these. Like all 3 are necessary in our life. Because 1, we need to be growing from those that are guiding us. We need to be growing together, ironing sharpen iron over here with each other, our mates. And you better believe we better be pouring into the people around us and in raising up the next generation and the next level of people to help them and be a mentor just like someone is for us. Problem is, most people aren't doing any of this. We're too busy. We're too this. We're too that. One, we may not even have a framework for it, right? But or two, nobody's ever told us. Or three, we just don't do it, right? Because it takes some work. But I'm telling you, if you want to grow to your potential, you've got to have all three. Just having this is like a third growth rate, 2/3 growth rate, 3 out of 3. You're firing all cylinders. Are you with me? All right, so let's break these down so that we kind of understand how to do this, okay? If you're going to surround yourself with people, there's 3 P's that I want to give you. Oh, Proverbs 13:20 in your notes. Let me read you this real quick. Walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm, right? Walk with the wise. Who you surround yourself with is a big deal. Okay, so 3 things that I want you to think about. The first one is when you think about people in your life, these mentors, these mates, these mentees, the first thing you got to do is pursue the right people. Pursue the right people. You've got to surround yourself with the right people that God is calling you to connect with. Proverbs 12:26 says, the righteous choose their friends, what? Carefully. But the way of the wicked leads them astray. Right? They just kind of get caught up in whatever. It says the righteous ones, they choose their friends and those that they surround themselves with very, very carefully. They're very intentional about it. Okay? So you got to pursue the right people. Now, here's some thoughts in your notes about mentors. Okay? Mentors. You need mentors who have been where you want to be and have done what you want to do. So you need mentors that have been where you want to be and have done what it is that you want to do. So you need to get clear about who are the mentors in my life that have been where I want to be and they're doing what I want to be doing. People that you can look up to. That you know, they're not perfect. Nobody is, right? Obviously. But they've been where you want to be and they're doing or they've done what you want to do. You've got to surround yourself with those people because they're going to help guide you. Now, I don't think this is just one person. This is why I put multiple people up here. Now, if you went back to me, right, and again, if I could roll out to you everything that I'm doing, you would see that when I talked about that F6, that circle of life, those 6 areas, that I have mentors in each 6 of those areas. Now, when I say mentors, I want to be very careful. I'm not saying that I sit down with them every week and spend 10 hours with them a week, right? Some of these people I talk to every few months and just connect with them and that. But I have mentors. There are people in each one of those areas. A financial person. In fact, I've got 2 or 3 people that I financially sit down with, and they're my mentors. I ask them questions. When I'm faced with financial different things, I sit down with them, and they know a lot about me and my personal finances. And I say, what do you think we should do in this situation? I have this opportunity here. What are your thoughts? And I'll just ask them questions, and I just listen to them because they are where I want to be, and they've done what I want to do. They're way further along than I want to be, and I trust them, right? Same thing with marriage and family. There are some people. I don't ask the finance people about my family, right? Not that they couldn't speak into it, but that's not their level of expertise. So I go through, I've got a few friends who are in fitness and personal training and all that, and I'll ask them questions. I don't meet with them very often, as you can tell, but, you know. But I do have some people in my life that I do that with. So now, this is me. Again, you don't have to start there. Again, I always tell people that, and they're like, John, my gosh, what is your life like so rigid that you have all these plans for all this different thing? And I'm like, well, yes, it is. I'm very, very intentional. But you have to understand, I'm not rigid. Like, I don't hit all these things all the time. I told you my growth plan. There's days that I don't hit it and that. And there's, times and seasons that I do right on spot. But I know what I'm aiming for because I got a target. So I'd rather have a target and miss it than not even know what I'm aiming for. Okay? So think about those people that have been where you want to be and have done what you want to do. Who are they? And you need to start thinking about some people in your life that you can reach out to and be able to connect with somehow, some way, so that they can pour into you and you can just become a sponge because they've got a lot of wisdom to pour into you if you'll take advantage of it. Does that make sense? All right, mates. Here's what you need to do when you think about mates. In your notes, you need mates who are where you're at and want to go further. Now, this is vital. Where you are at and want to go further. So, people who are on the same plane, maybe the same season of life, but here's the two things. They're where you're at, so that's pretty given, but they want to go further, okay? You need people in your life that can iron sharpen iron. They're going to push you, challenge you, not just be a yes person to you and just be kind of a, you go to them about everything, and they're like, oh, I can't believe that, and they always take your side and, all those kind of things. Right? Unless they should, right? But I'm just saying, you need people that are going to, they want to grow too. They're hungry. That, you're not just coming together. I see a lot of people, they're like, oh, yeah, I've got some social outlets. But when they get together, they're not wanting to get further along. They're just pouring out all their junk, It's like, yeah, but what are we doing to help each other, right? What are we doing to encourage one another? So you got to think about who are people in your life. Again, choose carefully. That you can surround yourself with, that are on the same level, that are in the same season, but they're hungry to go further, and they want to go somewhere further, right? In my life, I've got many people like this. There's a group that I met with for years. In fact, just over the last probably year, we kind of stopped meeting because they moved away and that, but we kind of had a mastermind group. Some guys that we were kind of in the same season of life with business and doing some things, and we would get together about once every 2 weeks for breakfast for about 2-3 hours and just talk about what they're learning, what I'm learning, and all that. And we're all just kind of in the same boat trying to grow. This week, I'm going on a retreat. Once a year, I get away with about 4 or 5 other guys that are my best friends from growing up. And we get away we call it the man trip every year. We get away for about 4 or 5 days. We get a cabin, and we go. And I usually will kind of plan the thing. I mean, we have our routine now because we've been doing it for I don't even know now, 12, 13 some years every year. And we get together, and we just have a good time. We hang out. We cook lots of food and all that. And we have questions. I got 5 questions that they're all going to answer and bring to the table. And for those 4 different days, each guy gets about 2 or 3 hours, and we just surround that guy. He answers some of the questions that we put together about life, where they're at, and all the other 4 of us just pour into him, just encourage him, give him advice. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And everybody gets an opportunity to go around. So I get mine, right? I got 4 or 5 guys that are going to, speak into my life for 3 hours, on Tuesday afternoon, I think is when we have it, right? We're just going to hang out and talk. Now we're going to have fun and do a bunch of other stuff too, and be guys and all that stuff. But these are things that I'm surrounding myself intentionally to do, right? Is to get around those kind of friends that can build each other up and push each other along. You've got to have that in your life. Right? Social interaction is great. Just hanging out, that's good. That's good. But who's more than that? Who do you get together with that you can do some life with and open up with? Got to have it in your life. You will starve on the inside if you don't. You will literally. That's why I love Fight Club, Legacy, some of the groups that we've been doing here at the church and that, because it's building opportunities for people to get together and open up and grow and iron sharpen iron and all those kind of things. Okay? Got to have that in your life. All right, last one is mentees. Got to have these people. You need mentees who are where you've been and doing what you've done. So remember, your mentor is someone who's been where you want to go and doing what you want to do. But you need to have mentees who are where you've already been and are doing what you've already done. You're a mentor to them. Does that make sense? And you've got to have that. One of the biggest tragedies I see about the next generation is that they don't have people mentoring them. And then we wonder why. I always, it's always so fascinating to me when we look at, and I'm not just talking about the current generation. I can remember this even being younger and looking back and thinking, we always give the next generation this bad rap. Like we're always complaining about work ethic or all that or, whatever it is. And it's always the same stuff, right? Like when I was growing up, my parents and the next generation above me were like, you guys don't work, you don't do anything, you guys are hippies. And, like every generation they think the next generation is lost, okay? But yet somehow they kind of figure it out, all right? But what I find fascinating through it all is this. We spend all our time complaining about the next generation, and I'm looking at it and going, that's because nobody's mentoring them. Nobody's taking the time to invest into them. We're more concerned about being upset and being frustrated and getting angry about the next generation rather than actually like doing our part. Now, you can't change everyone, right? You can't mentor everybody. But I'll tell you what, you grab 1 or 2 people, just organically, or maybe it's even at work. Maybe it's just an environment at work where you're already partnered with someone, and you can be frustrated with that person, or you can say, you know what, I'm going to try to take them under my wing as much as I can. I'm not saying they're going to, say thank you every day for it, right? But you just do what you can to pour back into the next generation. So I would encourage you, think about in your life where you can find some people that are behind you, that are where you've been and are trying to do what you've already done, and pour into them. Does that make sense? And I want to encourage some of you to do this. In fact, all of us. But you got to start somewhere. I would say start with mentors. If you can do anything, you get mentors. Outside of that, make sure you got good friends that you're surrounding yourself with, good mates. And then that third step that you need to get to at some point is, who am I mentoring? Who is the mentee? Who am I going to pour back into the next generation? And I'm telling you, this is the way God set the church up, but yet the church doesn't operate like this at all. And I don't just mean like the church, like Hoosier Harvest Church. I'm saying the body of Christ. It just doesn't happen at all. It's like a lost art, right? But yet it's so vital. So think about this in your notes. So pursue these people. Second thing I want you to think about is prepare. All right? We're going to come quick down the home stretch here. Got to prepare. So when you begin to get together with these people, you've got, when you get together, be fully present in the moment, ready to go. Okay? Three traits of being fully prepared. Okay? Here's number one, is get curious. Get curious, especially with those mentors. Even the mates, even the mentees, right? Ask questions. In fact, in your notes, the quality of your questions will determine the depth of your learning. Ask really good questions. Lean in with questions. Come ready to go. Listen, when I sit down with some of these mentors of mine, I'm not just coming and sitting down saying, hey, how you doing? I'm like, I got like 7 or 8 questions. I'm like, all right, are you ready? Because I got a whole bunch of questions for you today. Like, pour into me. What would you do in this situation? Hey, I'm faced with this. What would your advice be? Hey, when you were facing this, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, what did you do? How did you get through this? How did you make it through that? What are some of the things that you did that were helpful for you? So you come ready to go with questions when you meet with them, okay? Number 2, get coachable. So get curious, get coachable. Take this phrase out of your vocabulary. Are you ready? I know. Oh my gosh, right? I say it all the time too. How many times do we do this? You're talking to somebody giving advice like, I know. Like, no, you don't, or you would have done it. You don't know. Quit saying you know. You don't know. That's why you're in the same boat, right, of doing it all. So stop saying you know. But that's just a habit, right? We don't mean it sometimes intentionally. Just, I know. No, you don't. So just get coachable. Receive feedback. Quit defending all the time. And I know, I should do that. No. Do something. Number 3 is get committed. Write down what you're learning and act on it. So when you get around those mentors, write down what you're learning from them. Write down what you're learning from even your mates, even those mentees. Hey, you'll learn a whole lot when you start mentoring other people. It's a reciprocated kind of relationship, okay? All right, I'm going to move quick. Third thing is persist. So what do? We pursue the right people. We prepare to spend time with them by getting curious, getting coachable, getting committed, asking good questions, all of that. And you got to keep persisting at this. In your notes, the more you think you know, the less you try to learn. So you got to persist in your learning. The more you think you know, the less you'll try to learn. Right? I love what John Wooden said. I think it's in your notes. It's what you learn it's what you learn after you know it all that counts. It's a great quote by John Wooden. It's what you learn after you know it all that really counts. So stop, thinking that you got it figured out. The more you think you know, the less you're going to try to learn. Persist. In your notes, stay in a growth mindset. Stay in a growth mindset. I remember years ago, our kiddos, when our little girls were little, it was the weekend, and they were obviously out of school. It's the weekend. We were over at our grandparents' house. Mamaw and Papaw is what they call them. We were at Papaw's house, and Papaw was teaching them some things about something that he was doing. And I remember Zion, she was really little at the time, our oldest now, but she was real little. She said, Papaw, she stopped him right after he'd been teaching like something he was working on. She said, Papaw, it's the weekend. We don't learn on the weekends. Like, stop teaching me. This is for school. And I remember, again, it was one of those experiences, right? Happened so, and I just like seared on my head. And I thought, one, that was just funny. But two, I thought, gosh, isn't that true? Isn't that kind of how we are sometimes? We're like, look, I only want to learn when I want to learn. I don't really want to learn right now, right? And we have to always be in a growth mindset. So when we get around people, we have to understand just always be in a growth mindset. What can I learn? What can I, extract from these things? Just like experiences, but converting that into a person, because people have what you need. And if you can begin to extract those things, God will begin to surround you with the right people, okay? You can read this in Philippians about Paul saying, listen, I'm pressing on. You know the verse if you grew up in church, right? Not that I've already obtained it, but I just keep pressing on. Talk about a growth mindset. He just kept going and going and going and didn't stop, right? He persisted. In your notes, your humility determines your growth capacity. Your humility determines your growth capacity. So you've got to understand that you've got to keep that humble mindset. Okay? It's the idea of, I went to a hatchery years ago, actually the one right down here, the Grassy Fork, I don't think that's the name of it now, but fishery. In fact, did you know that in Morgan County, they, at one point, I don't know if it still is, but it was the goldfish capital. We source the most goldfish in the world. Is that right? Do you know, Ben? Yeah, from right here in Morgan County, in Martinsville, actually, which is fascinating. And koi, too, that was another one that they did. Did they still hold that kind of title? Yeah, I'm not sure either. But anyway, I remember going down there and taking a tour of it and working with the guy. Again, an experience, right? I was with this group. We went on a tour. I wouldn't have gone to a fishery. I'm not really into fishing and fish. I like to eat them, but that's about it. And we went on this thing. I probably wouldn't have gone, but I was surround myself with experiences. We go to the fishery. The guy's talking about how they grow fish. I'm like, okay, whatever. And all of a sudden, God's like, oh, the light bulb moment. And he said, well, we can determine the size of the fish depending on the size of the pond that we put it in. So he said, depending on the size, the bigger the pond, the bigger the fish will get. The smaller the pond, we can keep it at a certain size. So they had all different sizes of ponds, meaning water pond. And he said, we can determine and keep the fish at whatever size we want because the fish will grow based on its capacity and its environment. And I remember thinking, whoa, that's powerful, right? Like, again, back to those experiences. If we don't put yourself in experiences that are large and over your head, you're not going to grow. If you just keep yourself kind of in my little world, right? And right here, you're going to grow, but you're going to be a little goldfish, right? You're not going to get bigger because you're not surrounding yourself with a bigger environment that pushes you. Does that make sense? So it was just another thing where I went, oh, and then I wrote about it and I put it in a book, right? So that's what I do, right? So, I was like, wow, there's a moment. But I think about that, like you've got to be humble to just continue to learn and grow, right? Think about the wineskins. You can read about it later, if you know the verses in Matthew where it talks about the old wineskins that were kind of, old and already had been stretched. When they put new wine into a wineskin, that wineskin is soft, it stretches, but over time it gets brittle. And so it says you can't pour new wine into the old wineskin because when new wine gets poured in, the gas is released from it. And if that old wineskin is brittle and old and not pliable, then it bursts the wineskin. It just, and then the wine goes bad on that. So he said you've got to put new wine in new wineskins that are ready, that can expand and grow. Kind of the same thing like the fishery a little bit, right? It's like, listen, God's not going to pour into you unless you're humble and you're going to do something with it and you're hungry for it. And it's that kind of new wineskin that gives you that, pliability where God just pours more and more in so that you can contain it. Does that make sense? I think there's a lot of people that aren't hungry. They're brittle. They're not willing. They're not humble to grow and all that. And as a result, that new wine's coming in and it's not doing anything because you're not growing with that new wineskin. So, your people plan, and then we'll close with this. Your people plan. So, what do I need to do here? Here's 6 little things that I'm going to give you here on your people plan, okay? Number 1 is determine the category and the person. So, John, what do you mean by that? Here's what I mean. Determine the categories, especially when it comes to mentors. What are the categories in the people that you want to surround yourself with mentors with? So think about some areas in your life, categories. It could be those areas in your growth plan on week 1 that we identified the areas you want to grow in. And think about the people that could help you grow in those areas, okay? So think about that. Now, same thing for even like mentees. What are some categories of some things that you would like to mentor somebody in and help them with? Be on the outlook, right? People aren't going to come knocking on your door by any means and say, will you mentor me? It's never going to happen, right? Very rarely, unless that person is hungry to go. If someone comes and says, mentor me, you better drop everything you got and give them everything you got, because that is someone who is hungry to learn, because 1 out of every 10,000 people do that, okay? Now, they're not going to come knocking at your door, so here's what you're going to have to do. Build a relationship and begin to lean in and just try to identify some people that you can pour into. Start small. You don't have to change the world overnight. Again, it's not about you sitting down with them in a big classroom setting and all that. Remember, it's just living life, encouraging them, doing what you can. So you might have to go knock on some doors, some people slowly, and just build some relationship until that door begins to open up. Does that make sense? Now, with those mentors, you can knock on their doors and say, hey, I'm hungry, okay? So I think about the categories and the people. Second thing is contact them. I'm giving you in the trenches stuff, right? Like, I just want to spell this out. Contact them, like that's vital. They need to know that you're interested, okay? Schedule a meeting. I'm just giving you step by step. Forgive me if it's elementary. Prepare your questions, right? Come thinking about some of the things. Even if it's you're mentoring somebody, come with some questions, ask them about their life so that you can help encourage them. Or if it's you getting mentored, think about questions. If it's peers, listen, I'm notorious for this. Some of my friends that I go out and we just hang out with, I've always got a question for them. Hey, tell me about this, right? Like I'll just think of some question about, hey, tell me what you're learning about. What is it? What you're growing in? What is something you read over the last week or something like that? Like I'm just pushing on it. Number 5 is follow through, right? And number 6 is just keep going. Keep going. Don't give up. Don't stop. Somebody, falls away or whatever it is, just keep going. Don't stop. Don't quit. Just keep pressing on. Now, I know that's elementary, but I just wanted to give you a step by step of just some things that I've done that have been helpful. It's like, okay, identify it, right? Schedule a time, talk to them, contact them, right? Get questions in advance, follow through, make sure you get to that meeting and give it everything you got, and just keep going. Keep working that. If you'll do these 3 things, right? Resources like we talked about last week, experiences, people. Those 3 things, guys, you're going to begin to open up your growth unlike ever before. Does that make sense? So think about putting all those together now, right? It's a lot. We covered a lot tonight, okay? Think about all that from last week, the resources, the experiences, and the people. And listen, just start somewhere. Don't have to go crazy, and start putting it all together and say, how am I going to get resources? What am I going to do to be intentional about experiences? What people do I need to start pursuing and start surrounding myself with? If you'll get those 3 things, you're gonna be on your move. Okay. All right. Now listen, real quick. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Kept you over a few minutes tonight. Next week and the week after, the next 2 weeks, Pastor Chris is going to be doing a class here in person as well as live on YouTube, Facebook, and our website called Israel Illuminated. And Chris is going to kind of tap into his strength. He's incredible at history and geography and just the history of the Bible and Israel and all those things. He's not only been there several times, but just understands all the theology and that. So he's going to kind of unpack some of all that. Why is that significant? What does that mean for us, not just historically, but today? And why do we need to be aware of that and that? So, it's going to be a great class. Encourage everybody to come on back the next 2 Wednesday night, 6:30, or you can tune in live on the live stream as well. So thank you guys for coming out. God bless you guys. Hopefully it was incredibly helpful. And thanks for hanging with me the last few weeks. And go get them. If you got any questions, come grab me. We'll see you guys online another day.